Spinoza philosophy, banned thinker, religious threat, heretical ideas, divine redefinition. He was excommunicated from his own community, called a heretic, labeled dangerous, not for violence, but for how he defined God. His name was Baruch Spinoza, a 17th century philosopher who posed a question so radical it sent shockwaves through synagogues, churches, and royal courts. What if God wasn't a person? What if God wasn't watching, judging, punishing? Spinoza believed God was not outside of us, but within everything, in nature, in the stars, in thought itself. To him, God and the universe were not separate. They were one. That meant no need for prophets, no need for priests, no divine punishment, only divine order. The church called it blasphemy. The state called it rebellion. But Spinoza, he called it truth. In part 2, we'll dive into Spinoza's most radical claim, that God has no personality, and religion built a lie around making him human, God without personality. Spinoza's view of God, divine nature, religion versus philosophy, heretical belief. Most religions describe God as a person, loving or angry, forgiving or punishing, a being with will, emotion, and judgment. But Spinoza asked, why would the infinite have human traits? Why would the eternal creator get angry like us? Need worship? Demand obedience? To Spinoza, that wasn't divinity. That was projection. He saw God not as a person, but as the totality of existence, not a ruler in the sky, but the very laws of nature. Gravity was divine. The growth of a tree was divine. Your thoughts were divine. This God didn't listen to prayers, didn't favor tribes, didn't punish sinners. It simply was infinite, eternal, perfect. And that idea terrified the church. Because if God wasn't personal, then what happens to Scripture, to miracles, to sin? In part 3, we'll explore how Spinoza's view of God wasn't atheism, but something even more dangerous, a call to find the sacred without religion. Spinoza and atheism, redefining God, sacred beyond religion, spiritual freedom, divine everywhere. The church called him a godless heretic. Many assumed he was an atheist, but Spinoza wasn't denying God. He was redefining it. To him, God wasn't something you believed in. It was something you could experience, in nature, in thought, in the structure of existence itself. He wrote, God is not a ruler outside the world, but the cause of all things within it. That means you don't need a temple to feel the sacred. You don't need scripture to access truth. You don't need fear to find meaning. The divine is not out there. It's everywhere, in sunlight, in silence, in reason. Spinoza's vision didn't destroy spirituality, it freed it. But that freedom was dangerous because it removed the middlemen, the rituals, the fear-based obedience, and in doing so, it empowered the individual. In part 4, we'll uncover how Spinoza's radical ideas became the seed for the Enlightenment and how his forbidden philosophy still shapes the way we think today. Spinoza, Enlightenment influence, free thought revolution, philosophical awakening, secular spirituality, rational God. He was silenced in his lifetime, banned, feared, ignored, but his ideas didn't die. They spread, underground, quietly, like fire beneath the surface. Spinoza planted the seeds of a new world, one where truth wasn't handed down by priests, but discovered through reason, where God wasn't used to control, but to connect. His writings influenced great minds, Leibniz, Goethe, Einstein, even the founding fathers of America. His God, not religious, but rational, not authoritarian, but immanent, not fearsome, but cosmic. He didn't want to destroy belief. He wanted to liberate it from dogma, from superstition, from control, and that liberation launched a revolution. In part 5, we'll dive into the exile of Spinoza himself and the painful price he paid for thinking freely, because before he inspired the world, he was cast out by his own people. Spinoza excommunication, heresy punishment, banned philosopher, Jewish community exile, religious fear. It didn't start with the church, it started with his own people. In 1656, at just 23 years old, Baruch Spinoza was excommunicated from the Jewish community of Amsterdam, not for crime, not for violence, but for ideas. He questioned literal interpretations of Scripture. He challenged the image of a wrathful, personal God. He said religion should never silence reason. The rabbis called his views dangerous. They declared him cursed, cut off from the nation of Israel. No contact, no burial rites, no return. He lost family, friends, his entire world. But Spinoza did not recant. He did not hide. Instead, he wrote in silence, polished lenses by day, and polished the mind of humanity by night. He said, "The more you struggle to live in truth, the more you will be hated by those who fear it." His exile wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a life lived in quiet rebellion. In Part 6, we'll explore his masterpiece, The Ethics, the book that rewrote philosophy, challenged theology, and revealed his full vision of the divine universe. Spinoza Ethics Book, Divine Logic, Reality in God, Geometric Philosophy, Spiritual Blueprint, No Burning Bush, No Thunder from Heaven, Just Logic, Proofs, Equations. Spinoza's greatest work, Ethics, was not a sermon. It was a geometric demonstration of the universe. He began with definitions. What is substance? What is thought? What is God? Then came axioms, statements so self-evident they needed no debate. Step by step, proposition by proposition, he built a system where God was not a creator outside creation, but creation itself. To Spinoza, there is only one substance, infinite, eternal, indivisible. Everything else, mind, body, planets, people, are modes of that substance. That substance is God. He called it Deus sive natura, God or nature. No supernatural miracles, no divine interventions, just unbreakable laws of existence. In his view, understanding reality is understanding God, and the highest virtue is not obedience, but clarity. In Part 7, we'll break down how Spinoza redefined human freedom, not as free will, but as knowing what truly is. Spinoza free will, true freedom, deterministic universe, rational choice, freedom through understanding. We're told we have free will, that we choose, decide, control our path. But Spinoza said, no, you are not free because you can choose. You are free only when you understand why you choose. To him, the universe is deterministic. Everything happens through cause and effect. Every action, every thought, every emotion arises from something before it. Even your desires have causes. So where's the freedom? In understanding. When you grasp the nature of your emotions, when you see why fear drives you, why anger blinds you, why attachment controls you, you're no longer a slave to them. You don't resist the flow of reality. You align with it. Spinoza wrote, "The more we understand necessity, the more we become free." It's not about escaping the chain of cause. It's about seeing the chain clearly and moving with wisdom, not impulse. In Part 8, we'll explore how this kind of freedom leads to joy, not pleasure, not distraction, but a lasting inner peace that Spinoza believed was divine. Spinoza joy philosophy, inner peace, emotional clarity, freedom from suffering, rational spirituality. Most philosophies warn of pain. Religions promise reward, but Spinoza pointed to something deeper, joy. Not the joy of pleasure, not the joy of gain, but the joy that comes from seeing clearly. He said, when you understand your emotions, you stop being their prisoner. When you understand reality, you stop fearing it. You stop asking, why me, and begin seeing what is. For Spinoza, sadness arises when we are confused, when we think we've lost control. But clarity brings calm, and calm brings freedom. That clarity doesn't come from worship or from penance. It comes from philosophical meditation, from thinking deeply, from observing without illusion. In this, Spinoza's philosophy becomes spiritual, not in ritual, but in stillness, not in obedience, but in understanding. He believed joy was the sign of alignment with God, not because God rewards you, but because truth resonates in the soul. In Part 9, we'll uncover how Spinoza's God of nature influenced modern science, thinkers like Einstein, and even spiritual movements today. Einstein-Spinoza God, nature and divinity, scientific spirituality, modern philosophy influence, rational mysticism. When Albert Einstein was asked, "Do you believe in God?" he replied, "I believe in Spinoza's God." But what did he mean? Spinoza's God didn't perform miracles, didn't judge, didn't belong to any religion. Spinoza's God was nature itself, the laws of physics, the structure of reality, the mystery within order. Einstein saw the same awe in the universe, the symmetry of mathematics, the elegance of the cosmos. To him, that wasn't random. It was sacred. Others followed. Carl Sagan, Stephen Hawking, philosophers, scientists, even mystics. They found in Spinoza a bridge between reason and wonder, between logic and reverence, not a God to worship, but a universe to explore, with humility. Spinoza showed that you can be spiritual without superstition and scientific without being soulless. In Part 10, we'll bring it all together and ask the big question: what does Spinoza's God mean for you today? Spinoza modern meaning, divine philosophy, spiritual freedom today, God redefined, living truthfully. In a world of noise where belief is bought and fear is sold, Spinoza offers a silent revolution, not with fire, not with sermons, but with clarity. He asks, what if God is not outside you, but within every thought, every leaf, every law of nature? What if the sacred is not hidden in temples, but open in the structure of existence? And what if freedom is not about doing what you want, but understanding who you are? Spinoza's God doesn't command. It invites. It doesn't punish. It reveals. It says, look, think, feel, know. Not for salvation, but for sanity. Today, we live in a world hungry for meaning, haunted by division, torn between science and spirit. Spinoza stands at the center, saying they were never separate. That truth needs no temple, and the divine never needed permission to be everywhere. So what does Spinoza's God mean for you? Maybe it means you're free to seek without fear, to wonder without guilt, to live without illusion.